thought, voices of restraint, voices of sobriety. And very surprisingly, Madam Speaker, instead of these voices of restraint of sobriety coming from the Philippines, what surprised this presentation is that, in the opinion of this ample representation, the most eloquent voice of sobriety and restraint came from Hong Kong itself, which is supposed to be the victim of this crisis and this tragedy. Madam Speaker, I'd like to cite, and I think it's very important, so that we can place this in the right perspective in addressing the problem, in seeking an immediate and long-term solution to this apparent embarrassment and apparent inadequacy of our police forces. This came from the South China Morning Post by way of two editorials. The South China Morning Post, and a lot of people are aware of this, is probably one of the most eloquent voices in English in Hong Kong. It is a very respected media institution, often quoted. And my attention was called to these two editorials by Madam Raissa Robles, who happens to be a Filipina correspondent. Raissa is a very respected media personality in the Philippines and respected abroad as well. Let me read, Madam Speaker, with the permission of the body, the first editorial, August 24, right, the day after the tragedy. And I'd like to quote this. This is a black day for Hong Kong. Our thoughts and sympathies are with the families of the citizens shot in cold blood by a gunman in Manila last night. The grief and loss is shared by us all. We can but mourn. Their lives were snuffed out so needlessly. They were tourists in a foreign city in a country known for the friendliness of its people. This is the editorial of the South China Morning Post. A country known for the friendliness of its people. No one could have predicted what befell them. We watched in horror as the live television broadcast unfolded and the tragedy became apparent. There are questions, so many of them. What drove a decorated former policeman to bend his frustration so murderously? How did he come to be in a tourist area? Why did the tour bus driver decide to stop for him? How can so deadly a weapon as an M16 rifle be so easy to obtain and carried to the streets of a city by someone no longer permitted to have one? Why were negotiations so protracted? Could more lives have been saved? Some questions can be readily answered by those who know the Philippines. Others can perhaps be guessed at with a degree of accuracy. A few may never be answered. We should not rush to conclusions, though a thorough investigation has to be carried out. And I'd like to make my own notation here. These are like words coming from those who are very sober here in the Philippines, and not words of sobriety coming from Hong Kong. Let me continue. And this is probably a very heartwarming segment of the editorial, Madam Speaker. Let me continue. Tourism is a mainstay of the Philippine economy. The nation is among East Asia's poorest and relies heavily on the income from foreigners to provide jobs and much-needed revenue. Without them, the nation would be so much the poorer. It is an industry that has to, at all costs, be protected. And again, I'd like to make my notation. It is Hong Kong, through one of its voices, asking that our tourism industry be protected. And I continue, quote, there will be a backlash from foreigners as a result of yesterday's mayhem. It is a wake-up call to the nation's government to deal with lax security, poor control measures and the way its tourism industry operates, etc., searching for answers will not bring back the dead. Retrospective protective measures will not heal the wounds. Some of us will forever avoid Manila and maybe the Philippines itself from now on. There are scars that run too deep to be forgotten. An inquiry is needed, but it must be carried out properly. There cannot ever be a repeat of yesterday's incident. The Philippine government well knows that. As to Hong Kong tour operators, tragedies cannot be avoided, but every effort has to be made to prevent them. There are no easy solutions. Aquino is not the first leader to promise change. The ills require long-term cures. What is important for now is that we remember those taken from us. Life is unpredictable and can be cruel. Even when we do our best to keep safe, the least expected can happen. It occurred in Manila yesterday for a party of Hong Kong tourists. Thankfully, some survived. Their stories of luck and bravery will one day be told, but we also cannot forget those so helplessly cut down by a gunman. It is with thoughts of them that we mourn today. Madam Speaker, that was the editorial. Right after what happened. And as I said, these are words of sobriety, and these are things that must guide us. Again, I'd like to reiterate, these words of sobriety came not from Filipinos who are asking for understanding. These are words of sobriety that came from one of the most eloquent voices of Hong Kong, the South China Morning Post. And I think we should be guided accordingly, and we should seek reassurance and comfort from this very sobering editorial coming from the South China Morning Post. With that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share what I consider a very heartwarming and very sobering editorial of the South China Morning Post of Hong Kong. Thank you very much.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Golez to the appropriate committee.
Yes, Madam.
Are there any objections?
Manifestation.
We recognize the Honorable Bello.
Yes, I would just like